This is what happens when you start looking into the think tanks of the Fabian Society from 1884 to just after.
And they were precursors to the modern socialists, the Fabians.
No,
and with the English twist. They weren't Marxist socialists precisely. They were their own brand.
Exactly. But the template is the same. So Mussolini was good friends with Lenin. It's really important to realize that. He was the head of the Italian Socialist Party. And then he became a fascist because he was of the opinion, as was Lenin, that you could use power and force to take the reins of government.
Right. Catalyze the revolution.
Exactly. And so, but Mussolini himself says it as well. Take nationalism first, and then international socialism. That's the way we're going to do it. And so, this idea of using regulation and global laws in order to impose on weaker states is completely. You can see it now. The template was set, and it's been a process of establishing through the offices of these international institutions a world which would be governed centrally through the offices of the United Nations or the World Health Organization, all these bodies that strip you or me and anybody in this room of any actual rights. And you could see it in places like Austria, where the vaccine mandate was imposed, and suddenly the state tells you it is unconstitutional, but we'll do it anyway. And the reason why is because there's a scientific body of opinion that says that you ought to have drugs in your veins.
And a scientific body of opinion never says you ought.
Yeah.
As soon as someone says that the science says you ought, they've made the leap from is to ought, and science concentrates on is, not on ought. And so the idea that you can somehow blindly follow the science, and also that you're moral by doing so, is about the most anti-scientific proposition that there could be. And that the COVID mandates as well in Canada have precipitated what I think will be a constitutional crisis there too.
Yeah.
Because Trudeau is being taken to court right now on the grounds that his travel ban, which had no scientific justification whatsoever, even by the admission of the health personnel in Canada, that he attempted to compel to produce a post hoc scientific justification, found that the grounds for his actions were so threadbare and directed towards ensuring his hypothetical electoral victory in the last election, that they couldn't even fake a scientific rationale post hoc when they were demanded to by their bosses. So, but Canada's in such rough shape conceptually at the moment that a scandal of that nature, I think a scandal of that nature is so preposterous to Canadians that they can't even apprehend it.
But I think what's really difficult is that these scandals are coming thick and fast. Nothing changes. So the one constant that we were talking about, which has changed, the one thing that is not changing is the fact that these characters who are intellectually bankrupt are brazening it out.
Yeah, well, this winter might change all that. As soon as energy costs hit mortgage rate levels in the UK, then that game is going to be up. Because it just won't be sustainable.
But that's true, and that's why the interesting thing is that, I mean, we probably shouldn't spend too much time on the political landscape in the UK because it's complex and it's probably not that interesting in the long term. But what's interesting here is that some big things are happening which prove to us, to the observers, that the current leadership and thought, the current leadership structure and the current thought process has led to complete. Has led us, or has been led by people who are constantly wrong. They're wrong about everything they do. They're wrong in everything that they say. For the
they're
reason
wrong
for
in
this,
their vision. They're wrong in their strategy. They're wrong in their use of power.
In particular, because what we've seen in Europe over the last, let's say, 200 years, is a desire through the Fabians. It's interesting. I will send you that book. It's very important. But
Fabianism in the Empire.
What you see is people despising people who work for money. Right. People, the markets are.
It's like the Dutch not paying attention to the farmers, or the Trudeau government demonizing the truckers.
But it's deeply set. I mean, this and the reason why the Fabians decided to permeate the institutions, that's the terminology that you should perhaps keep in mind when you read these books, the permeation of institutions.
So that's where the Long March for the institutions came from.
That's the idea. That's where that's the development. So it's really, it's a very interesting, a bit dry, but it's an interesting book. And then suddenly what you see is that they notice very quickly in the early 1880s that the working man doesn't vote for them or for their policies.
Right.
And they're really upset that they really like this chap called Disraeli, because Disraeli was a very, very erudite, smart, funny kind of statesman.
And the working class is intractable in its refusal to see its own best interests.
Exactly. And so that's part of the process. So they decided we cannot win, but what we can do is become experts, and through our expertise, we go through the channels and we enable politicians to implement our policies, because we will advise them on the solutions. And
that's detailed out in
it's in a book. And so once you start to look at these things, you realize that the enemy of these people is the person that says no to them.
Yeah.
So you need force. You need there is no consensus to be had, and therefore what we were talking about, which is this this relationship between you and me, this reciprocity, this is a sign of respect. It's
and sustainability.
Absolutely. So if we are, lots can change, technology can change, but if we as human beings choose to accept that we are the same in terms of value before God, if we choose to accept that for my actions, there are certain things that they will have an impact on you, and vice versa, then we create a society that actually is quite stable and worth living in. If the moment you accept the Fabian premise that there is a small group of people who are right and therefore the others are wrong, that's when you start to create a society.
And that's justified by reference to expertise.
Exactly. And so there is a great quote in the book where one of the Fabians says, our aim is to make sure that when the people come to the barricades, to make all the constitutional changes, so that the moment they come to the barricades, we will be able to crush them. In other words, you use the Constitution and the law, you change them through the experts, and you strip the masses, as it were, of their frightening power. Once they get to the barricade, it's too late. That was the idea that they were developing, and so all of that becomes, I think, with hindsight, that's the reason why we live in this era of revelation, in my view. So much, if we choose to see what these discussions and where these ideas come from, and really just try to map them on today's world, we see lots and lots of strands that lead from the 1880s to 2022.